Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most shocking geopolitical developments of the year. Vladimir Putin is in big trouble after Denmark just made a bold move that could change everything. Denmark has officially taken action to cut off Russia's critical Baltic Sea lifeline, a move that carries enormous economic, military, and strategic consequences. This is not a minor policy shift. This is a direct blow to Russia's access to the heart of Europe through the Baltic Sea, one of the most vital maritime routes for Moscow's trade and energy operations. What we're witnessing right now could mark a turning point in Russia's long-standing dominance in northern Europe and could reshape the power balance across the entire region. To understand how serious this is, we have to start with the geography. The Baltic Sea is Russia's window to Europe, a narrow but crucial passage that allows its ships to reach global markets. Through this route, Moscow exports vital resources like oil, gas, and coal, and also supplies military goods to its allies. The port of Kaliningrad, Russia's isolated enclave sandwiched between Lithuania and Poland, has long depended on sea and land routes through the Baltic for survival. Now, with Denmark's decision to restrict access and tighten maritime controls, that window is closing fast. Denmark's control over the Danish Straits, the narrow waters connecting the Baltic Sea to the North Sea, gives it incredible leverage. And now it's using that power to send a very clear message to Moscow. This decision did not come out of nowhere. For months, tensions between Russia and the Nordic states have been escalating. Denmark, along with its Scandinavian neighbors, has become increasingly concerned about Russia's military activity in the Baltic region. Fighter jets have been intercepted near Danish airspace, and naval patrols have reported unusual Russian submarine movements. All of this has created a sense of urgency. Denmark's move is not just symbolic. It's a preemptive step to limit Russia's ability to project power in the region, especially as NATO continues to strengthen its northern defenses. The Danish government, supported by its allies, has now implemented stricter maritime regulations that make it almost impossible for Russian ships to freely transit these waters without scrutiny or delay. For Putin, this is a nightmare scenario. The Baltic Sea is not just a trade corridor, it's a strategic artery for military logistics and energy exports. By restricting Russia's freedom of movement, Denmark is effectively choking a vital supply line. Every ship that leaves Russian ports like St. Petersburg or Kaliningrad must pass through these straits to reach the Atlantic. Now, with new restrictions in place, Russia faces the possibility of delays, inspections, and even detentions of vessels under international law. This adds an enormous layer of complexity to Russia's already strained economy, which has been under heavy sanctions since its conflict escalated in Ukraine. The move also highlights something much bigger: the growing isolation of Russia in its own neighborhood. Once, Moscow commanded fear and influence across northern Europe. Today, even small nations like Denmark are taking bold actions to push back. This is not just about one country standing up to Russia. It's about a united European front signaling that aggression has consequences. What makes this particularly damaging for Putin is that Denmark's decision comes at a time when Russia is struggling to maintain its energy dominance. Europe has diversified its energy supplies, reduced dependence on Russian gas, and strengthened partnerships with the United States, Norway, and Qatar. That means Russia no longer holds the same leverage it once had over European nations. Economically, this could hit Russia hard. The Baltic Sea route carries a large portion of Russia's exports, including oil and refined petroleum products. Any disruption here means financial losses that Russia can ill afford. Tankers forced to reroute will face longer travel times and higher insurance costs. Some analysts predict that the combination of Denmark's restrictions and existing sanctions could cut Russia's maritime exports through the Baltic by up to 30% over time. That's not just a temporary setback. It's a strategic chokehold that will ripple through Russia's energy sector, which is already under immense strain. But there's also a military dimension to this crisis. The Baltic Sea has become one of the most militarized regions in Europe. With Finland and Sweden joining NATO, the alliance now effectively surrounds Russia's Baltic access points. Denmark's latest move adds yet another layer of containment. The Danish Navy, working closely with NATO allies, now monitors nearly all maritime traffic in the region. Any Russian naval movement, whether it's a submarine patrol or a cargo ship carrying military supplies, is under constant watch. This severely limits Moscow's operational flexibility. The message is clear. Russia's freedom of movement in the Baltic is over. For the Kremlin, this is more than just a logistical problem. It's a psychological one. Putin has long portrayed Russia as a resurgent global power, unshaken by Western opposition. But now, his forces are being boxed in from every direction. On the ground, the war in Ukraine continues to drain resources. In the Black Sea, Russian naval dominance is being challenged by new Western-supplied technologies. And now in the north, Denmark's decision closes yet another door. The image of an unstoppable Russia is crumbling, and with it, Putin's narrative of control and strength. Of course, Moscow has responded with outrage. Russian officials have condemned Denmark's move as an act of economic warfare and provocation. There have been threats of retaliation, both diplomatically and economically. Some analysts believe that Russia might attempt to use hybrid tactics, such as cyber attacks or disinformation campaigns, to pressure Copenhagen and destabilize public opinion. Others warn of increased military posturing, with Russian naval exercises designed to test NATO's resolve. But the reality is that Denmark's actions have strong backing from the European Union and NATO. Any attempt at direct escalation would risk uniting the West even further against Moscow, something Putin can't afford right now. For Denmark, this move also represents a moment of national strength. As one of NATO's smaller members, it has often been overshadowed by larger powers. But in this case, Denmark has used its geography to assert real influence. The Danish Straits are among the most strategically valuable waterways in the world, and controlling them effectively gives Copenhagen a veto over who can enter or leave the Baltic Sea. By enforcing these new restrictions, Denmark has proven that even small nations can play a decisive role in the global balance of power when geography and timing align. Meanwhile, for Europe as a whole, this signals a new phase of containment against Russia. The Baltic Sea, once seen as a shared economic zone, is now transforming into a zone of strategic confrontation. The cooperation that existed decades ago has given way to mistrust and military readiness. As NATO strengthens its presence, and nations like Denmark, Sweden, and Finland coordinate defense strategies, Russia's room to maneuver shrinks even further. The once open waters of the Baltic are turning into a security fortress for the West. The implications of this for Russia's future are profound. Losing control of access to the Baltic weakens not only its economy, but also its geopolitical influence. Kaliningrad, in particular, is at risk of becoming a strategic liability rather than an asset. Isolated and surrounded by NATO territory, it could face supply shortages and logistical challenges if the situation worsens. For Putin, who has built his reputation on restoring Russia's great power status, this is an embarrassing and dangerous setback. It exposes the limits of his reach and the growing resilience of Europe's smaller nations. This crisis also sends a warning to other authoritarian regimes watching closely. The message is that no matter how powerful a country seems, coordinated action by smaller democracies can still make a difference. Geography, alliances, and timing can combine to neutralize even the most formidable powers. The Baltic Sea, once dominated by Russian influence, is now a symbol of how unity can overturn fear. As we watch this unfold, the world is seeing the slow but steady constriction of Russia's geopolitical arteries. Each move, from sanctions to military reinforcements to maritime restrictions, is tightening the circle. Denmark's decision might appear like a small step, but in strategic terms, it could be one of the most consequential. It cuts deep into Russia's access, its economy, and its pride. In the coming weeks, we'll likely see more responses from Moscow, perhaps new threats or countermeasures. But one thing is certain, Putin's problems are growing, and Denmark's bold move has just made them worse. The Baltic Sea, once Russia's lifeline to Europe, is now becoming a wall of resistance. The chain reaction has begun, and it's pushing Russia into one of its most difficult strategic positions in decades. That's the full breakdown of how Denmark's decision to cut off Russia's Baltic Sea lifeline has put Putin in serious trouble. This is a defining moment in the modern geopolitical landscape, a reminder that in today's interconnected world, even one strategic move can trigger massive global consequences. Stay tuned for more updates as this story continues to unfold, because what happens next in the Baltic could reshape Europe's future for years to come.